All right, so consider this part two of how to save more money when you're already retired. Today we're going to kind of focus more on investment and withdrawal strategies, at least things that I've learned, things that I've found. Again, I want to just declare I'm not an expert, I'm not a financial expert. I'm just a blue collar worker that's retiring next year in June, hoping to make the most of my money. I've done most of my own research. I've gotten some guidance from other people that are better educated. I would expect that you do the same thing, okay? These are just some tips and strategies that I have found. A lot of these are everywhere, okay? So the first one, obviously, is establish a sustainable withdrawal rate. How long can you make your money last? Well, that depends on how long you need it to last. And of course, you want to make it last as long as you possibly can. And nobody knows for sure how long they're going to make it. And so the idea is to try to, I think, is to look at somewhere in the 20 to 30 year number. And so most withdrawal rates are based on the money lasting at least that kind of a time range, 20 to 30 years. The most common is the 4% rule, where you take 4% out of your retirement the first year and then kind of do a reassessment. And then based on how the markets change, how much inflation rates change, you make adjustments based on that. And that can kind of help you identify what there is to come out. And then ideally, you're making 8% on your money and you're only withdrawing 4%. So you're really never running out of money. That would be perfect, right? And that's what we all hope. All right, another step to this is to balance your risk with your investment portfolio. It seems that as we get older, they tend to recommend that we go more towards bonds and do a 60-40 mix. Whatever mix works well for you. Consult a financial expert to see what's a good number for you to work with. And a lot of that's based on comfort range. Right now, I'm fully vested in stocks. The S&P 500 has been a great return on my investments for a very long time. It historically does 11%. And I'm comfortable with taking that kind of a risk. And because even in a down year, there's going to be an up year. So the balance to me works out because you're not just picking one stock, you're picking a group. You got a group to work with. And the whole group's got to suffer for you to suffer enormously. So obviously there is always ups and downs. So when you're in stocks and you're playing any part of that field, you have to manage that risk based on your comfort level. Now, a very popular strategy that people use a lot, and I've heard a lot of people use this strategy in different names for it, but it's basically the 3-bucket method. And so you have bucket one, which is, it kind of follows a way that you would budget your money even before you retire, is that you have your weekly expenses and monthly expenses, that's short term. You have your emergency fund, $1,000, which is just the basic big emergencies that pop up that you're not ready for. Then you have your long-term emergency fund. And then you start to pay down debt, etc. Well, in these scenarios, your short term is a 1 year worth of expenses. That's the bucket you're going to pull out of, that your income is going to go into, and then you're going to pull out of to pay your monthly expenses. And then you would have your 2 to 4 year expenses, your intermediate term, and that would be something that's more like a conservative, using the CDs, short-term bonds, those kinds of things where they mature a little bit quicker, but they're not huge value makers. Most CDs are in the 3 to 5% range, depending on how long you go, how much your investment is. But they're designed for short turnover. And then you would have your long-term investments, which would be the rest of your stocks and your bonds and your holdings and whatever else you're using, 401k type of things or IRAs. So you'd have those 3 buckets, and then you'll pull from those based on the needs and what the situation is. So your monthly bills would come out of your short-term that's always refilled with your income, right? And your withdrawals from that bucket should never exceed what's going in because that's what you're living off of. Bucket 2 is for those short-term things that pop up. You need a new roof, you need a new stove, your refrigerator breaks, and then you're just constantly kind of reinvesting it. If you don't end up using it, you could use that maybe for a vacation. And then, of course, your long-term would be the stuff that's going to be there longer and you want to sustain for the 20, 30-year duration. So you don't ever touch that unless it's like a financial devastation hits you and you have to touch it. But those would be the 3 bucket strategies, that, at least the way I'm familiar with them. You may have a different interpretation. Of course, use what works for you. I think the key is to, always, and I'm very stressful for this, I stress this all the time. Is know your income, know your budget, and live within it. That's standard common sense advice from a non-financial expert that I've lived by, which has got us to a point where we can retire a little early and still have the life we want in a place we want to be. Down in sunny Florida, it's the Sunday after Thanksgiving, it's 85 degrees today. That's the kind of life I want to have every day. So you have to prepare financially to do those kinds of things, and you need to know how to live in a budget. And then, of course, the last point for me I'd like to make today on this part 2 is that you need to know and have to be willing and able to pick up side work if you need it. If you don't want to continue working full time, there's no reason you can't work part time. Find something you enjoy doing. Do a side hustle. YouTube would be considered a side hustle. It's not a money maker for me at this point, but doesn't mean it couldn't be. And by the time I retire, if it's making $1,000 a month, that's great. That adds to my income, right? If you're good at woodworking, you may want to start doing some crafting. If you have a skill set, if you love to mow yards and you have a good equipment to do that, there's all kinds of ways that you can make money on your own without having to go back and work for the man. However, there's a lot of great companies out there that look for people like us that have got a 40-year track record of showing up for work, being on time, and getting things done. And they're willing to give some benefits, even if you work part-time. I know that Home Depot, I know Lowe's. I talked recently about Trader Joe's. My daughter just got a full-time job there and loves it and is making decent money for her first job out of college. Down in Florida, Publix is huge, and they love seniors, and they take good care of you and give you shifts that you can work with. But, businesses need folks like us that know how to get to work on time, and then put in a full day's work. Even if it's just a part-time job, even if it's going to be 4 hours a day. They love people that can show up and be on time, and they always have trouble filling those early shifts and filling those time frames where the young people don't like to get out of bed. Let's be honest. So consider those things are options. There's no reason that you have to suffer financially if you have the ability to do some kind of work. And of course, there's all kinds of different side hustles you can do online, including selling eBay stuff or posting online about other stuff. If you have a expertise in something, you can offer some coaching or courses in those things. There's lots of ways to make money. So don't ever let the money determine and be the limiting factor for you when there's opportunities out there to do other things. Anyway, that's all I got for today. Hope this helps. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.